Hello and welcome to the Quarantine Break podcast. Today's guest is Paul Chahidi. I've been the biggest fan of this country for years. It has gone from cult fandom to bona fide British classic. This was a really fun conversation, and as you'll soon hear, he's just the loveliest man. It's really not hard to see why the dog collar fitted him so well. Take a listen and I'll be back at the end. Hello, Paul. The warmest of welcomes to you today.
Oh, lovely to be here. Hello.
Where are you calling from today?
I'm currently in my son's room in our flat in Crouch End, in rainy Crouch End. It's the quietest room in the house, but you do your best and improvise, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the second I started recording, the builders outside started, my cat's bells jingling. This is the new working from home life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very strange. I'm sure the word strange is cropping up a lot in all your conversations. It's my most used word at the moment.
I have to start, of course, with the most obvious but important question in the new world. Are you and your family well and healthy?
We are, thank you. We are, and we are literally just taking it day by day, one day at a time, trying to stay sane. It's the mental side of things that you have to really kind of keep an eye on because you're in close proximity with other people. I mean, obviously it's a different thing if you were alone, but we have an 8-year-old son and it's him, my wife and me here. And you have good and bad days. You're keeping a child occupied. You are trying to do what I would very loosely call homeschooling, but I hesitate to even call it that. And I kind of rebel against the idea of actually achieving homeschooling. We're keeping them alive, keeping them safe and keeping them loved. But anything beyond that is an absolute flipping bonus. And we're trying to make our lives easier for ourselves in a positive way by just not trying to achieve too much and just setting very achievable goals.
Yes, definitely.
So if our son can just about add up and it's no worse than it was before and read and it's no worse than it was before, that will be a triumph. But really, it's not our main priority and everyone is just muddling through and doing their best. But we're okay. We're okay.
I think there's been that reaction now, hasn't it? We started off like, I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm going to do everything.
Oh, God. I know. But as soon as people were saying that, I was mentally going, oh, please shut up. No one wants to hear this nonsense. And battering us over the head with what so-and-so achieved and what's it. Great. I'm really pleased for people if they are achieving loads of things and pushing their band, learning languages. And, little Johnny's become a piano prodigy in this period. It was the most enriching time of our lives. But just keep that to yourselves, please. We're just doing our best, muddling through. Some days are really hard. It's really hard. There are times when you feel like you're wading through treacle and morale can be very low. It's the worst days are the ones where the three of us, in one form or another, are either grumpy, slumpy, or low. They could be our Snow White names, couldn't they? Grumpy, slumpy, and low. On a bad day, that is all three of us, but can't go down that rabbit hole. You have to kind of keep pushing on. And if we've had a half decent day, then that's a win in some way.
So this podcast is about taking hopefully a tea break from the world and the news. This is a new world when all we do now is eat banana bread because we keep forgetting all the bananas we bought at the start of this thing and now have excess of. Where do you stand on banana bread, Paul?
I'm going to set my stall out now. I have not baked a single thing. I would like to say it's because I couldn't get hold of any flour, which I can't. But even if I could, I wouldn't have baked anything. I'm just not a baker. So all these people posting pictures of their sourdough, I'm deeply impressed. But on the plus side, we are keeping our local bakers in business by ordering deliveries from them. So I'll eat a slice of banana bread. Quite frankly, I'll eat anything that comes my way at the moment. That's another struggle. It's like not eating and drinking to excess the whole time, but whatever gets you through.
It is interesting that banana bread has become the fad now because even the prettiest Heston-inspired banana bread shot with the best camera, it's not a pretty thing, is it? It looks like a painful bowel movement.
Wouldn't his banana bread be full of pig's blood and snails or something?
Yes.
I know. It was sourdough, banana bread. What are the other things that are making? Well, gin and tonics are featuring strongly on my timeline.
Oh
on
yes,
Twitter.
I saw your one. I think the other day. Was it with black pepper or?
Oh my God! Whole new world, Simon. Who was it? It was Rebecca Front.
Yes,
Rebecca Front, wonderful actress who I don't actually know personally, but we got connected via Twitter. It's one of the positive things to come out of that platform. And she posted this picture and I went, oh, it's nearly drinks o'clock, whatever time, so 11 a.m., whatever it was. And I was like, I'm going to try that. And it was absolutely delicious. So, but it can be, I did it with vodka actually. And you just grind a sparing amount of black pepper on it with cucumber and lime or lemon. Delicious.
Oh, that sounds really, really good.
So good.
So looking at the time, it's probably not time for gin and tonics just yet, but well, maybe it's time enough any time now.
The yard arm is a very, very movable feast right now, isn't it? Time is elastic and drinks o'clock is also very elastic. Yeah, but I try not to judge anyone on what they're doing to get through any given day right now.
I'm having tea at the moment, but how do you take your tea? Any particular bag or blend?
I am having a cup of tea, yes.
As an occasional fictional vicar, I really hope it's in a china cup.
Well, look, it's in a mug, but it does have rather camp roses on it. And it is the type of thing that perhaps Reverend Francis would be drinking out of. I do like tea. I do like coffee. I drink one coffee a day, otherwise I get the jitters. But my tea drinking can be prodigious. And I like Yorkshire Gold, but I'll quite frankly drink anything if I had to get my hands on it. It's like people who say, oh, I love a good, if you're wine bore or something, I love a Cote de Rhone, and rattle off some rather fancy name. But you know full well that if times got tough, you'd be drinking the paint stripper just to get that hit. No, so I'm having a cup of tea, everyone. Please don't worry for me.
So we're quite a way in lockdown, and this is some way into this show. But for new listeners, this show is all recorded on video chat. But it's strange because before all this started, the only people I spoke to video on chat was occasionally family. And even then, my dad didn't really understand where the camera was. So I'd be largely talking to his forehead or his left nostril.
I'm still doing that with my mum. The first thing I say is, tilt the camera down, please, Mum. Slightly bad-tempered start to any conversation.
That's true. I always start in a bad mood with him, and then it just descends.
And the trouble is you have to then put on some face because you can see yourself on camera and you're going, oh, I've also got to do the way I look. What happened to good old audio calls?
I also worry on video chats that I do spend the majority of the call looking at myself just to kind of monitor how my face is and what it's doing.
I know. I'm thinking of perhaps getting a small square of paper with some blue tack for future FaceTime calls and just covering my face up because I hate looking at myself at the best of times. A nightmare for me as an actor is going to watch something I've been in on telly and go, oh, that's hideous. Why do I have to see that bloke with a double chin and the shiny bald head again?
Have you been using video chat for anything else apart from keeping in touch with loved ones?
Well, yes. I mean, who knew that Zoom would be one of our most used words? Even I have been getting into Zoom. I've talked to some friends on Zoom, but also I was in a very unfortunate, but very fortunate position of rehearsing a play, believe it or not. And we rehearsed it on Zoom. It's for a theatre company called Headlong. And they've got, I think, a bunch of about 10 writers, directors, and then a cast of about probably over the plays about sort of 30 people or 20 people doing these short playlets.
Wow.
And I was in one of them. And we rehearsed on Zoom over about 4 days, two hours at a time. And then we spent one morning recording it. And it was helped by the fact that our play was a Zoom meeting. The other plays, I believe, were not and were far more technically challenging. It will be interesting to see, though, A, how that looks, and B, whether this is a means of survival for theatre in the coming weeks or months, potentially, theatre's not being open.
The more I think about it, there's another industry that I'd completely forgotten had been hit, and theatre has been hugely hit, obviously, because no one can go and sit together at the moment.
Well, absolutely. And if you think about it, God willing, things will start to open up again when it's safe to do so in all areas of life and business and work. For our industry, I can see how radio, television and film will start moving again relatively quickly compared to theatre, which will take much longer, I imagine. And I think faces far greater challenges, because if you think about how will you monitor 500 people, what stage will we need to be at to allow 500 people to congregate? So I think what happens with sport will be closely mirrored by what happens with theatre. You have to be in a very safe place with the virus to get to the stage where you can reopen theatres. And that's really, really worrying for so many people. I mean, let's talk about the industry I know.
Yeah.
But for people who work in theatre, it means they may not have work for a really quite long time. And if there aren't opportunities in television for so many actors, then where does that leave them? And let's not forget that, theatre is the kind of the breeding ground for the talent that you then see on screen, for writers and actors particularly. Yeah. So I would really hope that actually, and maybe there's some of them are doing it already, but the big broadcasters and platforms like BBC, ITV, Netflix, Amazon, all of them might be putting some money into supporting theatre for when things to keep it going until things ease up. But it's a very worrying time for that part of the industry, definitely.
And what was it like acting on video chat? Because I say this as someone with a couple of well-received school nativity performances in his locker.
I don't underestimate how big a thing that is, okay?
I was first king, so I had the gold.
Post you your BAFTA. I'm sending you. It's on its way.
I suppose so much of acting is responding to other people's performances. Is that really quite a difficult thing to do digitally?
Yes, it is. Well, as you said, you have the added challenge of seeing your face as well at the same time, which is really off-putting. Even with real filming, you don't have to watch yourself as you do it. And with Zoom, we had to make a decision whether we were looking right into the lens or, as we would do in a Zoom meeting, at the various little squares on the screen, which then take your eyes away from the lens. So it's a slightly strange kind of balance we were having to strike. But yes, I've seen there are going to be some other projects coming up. I think I saw one with Darren Boyd that's going to be filmed in various people's homes. And so they were casting actors who had children who could act with them because they were all self-isolating, and they kind of did it that way. And I think Sheridan Smith's in that too. So I'll be very interested to see how that works. It's very interesting to see how everyone, not just in the acting business in our world, is adapting to all this. Things are happening, but a lot of stuff is completely shut down, and it feels like we're surviving and waiting to see what happens next. And that's a very strange place to inhabit. Psychologically, mentally, it's a very strange place to inhabit.
Yeah. And how do you approach doing an online thing? Do you learn your lines, or do you just have the script on your computer ready to...
I thought I could get away with not learning them and having them pinned really close to where the camera was. It was a nightmare. And I looked back on some recordings I made, and I was quite clearly reading a script. So luckily, just before we were recording, I learned the lines. I learned the damn lines, Simon, like my job. I actually did my bloody job. And no, I still did that. You get quite a lot of practice as an actor doing that kind of thing, because a lot of auditions now are what are called self-tapes, and you'll record yourself at home doing a scene with some poor member of your family or your other half who you've roped in to read the lines with you. And so you're used to kind of learning things quickly and doing things to camera. So that helped.
This has been a very new time for so many people. You've mentioned some of the challenges you faced, such as homeschooling, but what other challenges have you faced during this time?
Honestly, the biggest challenge is morale. It is morale, and it's keeping up. I have to choose my words carefully because I think it's really important that one is allowed to feel down and one feels grumpy and down when one needs to, because I think otherwise you'd go mad. And I just think it would be sort of a form of insanity trying to stay cheerful all the time through this. And the trouble with social media is that if you spend too much time on it anyway, you're seeing a curated version of everyone's lives, and it can amplify that very unhealthy sense of the grass is greener, or that other people are having a very productive time right now and they're finding purpose in everything. And I'm sorry, I think it's bullshit if that's what people are projecting most of the time. Because if we're honest, if we're lucky, we have a little bit of productivity each day, but most of the time it's just getting through each day. And that is enough if you're achieving that. The struggle is trying to find something positive to do each day or keep one's spirits up, put it that way, whether it's mine or my partner's or my son's. It's a strange dichotomy I feel at the moment. I have, in many ways, every day I've been really quite busy.
Yeah.
But I have never achieved so little at the end of each day. It's strange. I'm busy, but I don't achieve much. So trying to find time for a chat with some friends or something is really hard.
Yeah.
And for us, it's partly to do with having a child in the house 24/7. It's odd. And you have to find moments, little oases of time to yourself, while sort of sharing the workload with your other half, or if you're in that situation, and then finding things to do that kind of make you feel better about life, and try not to drink too much and stuff like that as an adult. Seriously, I just think you just got to watch it. And also, I don't know about you, but I've really noticed that if I'm not careful, I could spend, if I were able to, hours mindlessly scrolling on my phone and checking things out and going down that rabbit hole.
More so than ever, actually, I think.
Yes, absolutely. It's a sort of numbing thing. It's almost like the digital equivalent of having a quick cigarette. It staves off the ennui and dread of impending death and doom all around us for a short while, but then leaves you in a slightly worse place than when you started. That's the main challenge. Yeah. And at the same time, you kind of have to go easy on yourself. I think it's so important to go, there is no, I am not going to beat myself up about this and create sticks with which to beat myself up in terms of achieving things. Yes, it's great if you can do something. Yes, it's great if you've got a bit of work. So I'm talking to you about doing a play or something on digitally. But I'm very, very aware that a lot of my friends have nothing. Yeah. And I just think it's a time to be incredibly kind and forgiving to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are seeing a lot of that, actually. It's the other side as well. But actually, if you want to, one can just choose to focus on the positive side that one is seeing in people. And there's a lot of that. And that gives me hope.
One thing I have to mention, because I genuinely think it's one of the greatest things ever, and I'm really jealous of your son's school, but he was doing gymnastics over Zoom.
Yes.
How does that work? And why is your son's school so awesome?
He doesn't do it at school, though. He's part of a club. So we live in kind of Crouch End, Muswell Hill, that area. And there's a gymnastics club. Yeah. And he is very into this form of gymnastics called rhythmic gymnastics. So there are two types. One is artistic, which is, if you watch the Olympics, it's the vaults, the bars, floor exercise, the rings and all of that. Now that is men and women competing in that sport. He's into the other type, which is with the ribbon, the hoop, the ball. Do you remember? It's sort of like dance mixed with gymnastics. Yeah. And it's all done on the big floor.
Amazing.
And that is called rhythmic gymnastics, and he's into that. And that is on a competitive level, at the highest level, is women only. It's one of the few sports that is women only. But he loves it.
Yeah.
He's really passionate about it. He's amazingly good at it. And no disrespect to me and my wife, but we've both said this. It's like, you look at us, you may think many things about us, Simon, but we don't look like gymnasts. We don't look like we've ever been gymnasts, even with the kindest eye, So we're slightly like, was there a mix-up? Is there some Russian sort of dancer out there who has got some child who likes a good laugh and eats a lot? Not to say our son doesn't like that, but he goes to a club and he loves it, and they've adapted. Like we're saying, a lot of people are adapting. He has a teacher who is in Greece, has gone back to her family in Greece.
Amazing.
But she does the classes over Zoom.
That's incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. And she's adapted it to people doing it in their living rooms suddenly. And like us, we've got neighbours, very understanding neighbours who live below. We warn them for an hour. There'll be a bit of thumping. He's having a gymnastics lesson. But it's a lifesaver. It really is, because it gives him a kind of a link back to normality and what he was doing before, and routine, and some physical activity for which he doesn't need to leave the house.
I saw History with Danny Dyer announced the other day, and this sounds so much more fun.
Well, gymnastics from home is something we could all be doing, isn't it? It's very Joe Wicks-like, isn't it?
I do watch the Joe Wicks thing, but just on in the background, as I would watch any TV show. Like, I don't watch The Wire and try and participate. I just...
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come clean. I've been doing Joe Wicks. It has been absolutely brilliant. Our son has started doing it with us, and then was like, it's a bit boring. But we were so worried that if we didn't do something and we needed encouragement from outside, we literally might not. You might turn into Jabba the Hutts and never fit through the door again. So we've been doing it. I get through about 4 out of 5 a week usually.
That's really good.
It's been great though. I mean, we're very lucky. We've got a roof terrace, and then we're near the grounds of Alexandra Palace, so we can do our hour of allowed exercise out there, which usually involves me going and sort of playing catch with our son or running around with a ball with him. But we do it on the roof terrace most mornings, and it's whatever gets you through. So I mean, some people that would be anathema. I listened to Rufus on a previous episode. He was very much not of the Joe Wicks school, which is also fair enough. But it's been a good thing in our lives, actually, that kind of thing.
I did the first one, and I'll be honest with you, I thought, this is a bit easy. And then the next day, I was obviously hobbling around.
Hobbling like a very old person. Yeah.
So while we're talking about what we've been watching, I mean, for me watching Joe Wicks, what else have you been watching these past few weeks?
It's been a strange mixture. So our routine will mean that by the time we've got our son to bed, it will be kind of between 8 and 8:30 before we have any free time to ourselves. But if we do have any time, it means it's from sort of 8:30, say, onwards. And you're absolutely shattered at the end of each day. I've got about an hour and a half, possibly 2 at a push in me before my eyes start to droop. But we have veered towards, on the whole, things that have been quite comforting in one way or another. Yes, we've done Tiger King, which was utterly, horribly and brilliantly compelling.
I think that's exactly the way to sum it up.
Oh, it's extraordinary. And quite often when you see people banging on about something, everyone's talking about it. We are way behind everyone else. But we actually watched this fairly soon after it came out. And that was amazing. Yeah. It says so much about human beings. It says so much about America. So we watched that. I was watching. I said to Kate, do you know, there are a few things. I often have this conversation with my wife. I said to Kate, I've never seen some of those Brat Pack films. Should we watch one? So we watched St. Elmo's Fire. Flipping loved it. I mean, because I was a teenager in the 80s and early 90s. And so I watched people like Rob Lowe and all these fantastic actors, Emilio Estevez at the beginning of their career. Watched that. Been watching quite a bit of comedy. So I'm quite into Modern Family and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the American comedies. What We Do in the Shadows. I did say I'm way behind everyone, but bear with me. That's another thing we're watching. Very much into, and have just started, again, way behind everyone else, Succession.
Oh, that's so good, isn't it?
I feel so glad I've just started on it, because even now I'm just loving it.
Yes.
A couple of friends said to me, stick with it, because it'll take 2 or 3 episodes before you accept that you might care about anyone, because they're so hideous, the people involved.
Yeah.
And it's true, but I've been hooked already, and I'm only 3 episodes in.
It's incredible. I don't understand the alchemy of the show, that we hate all of the characters, but it's still so compelling and we care about them, but not in a way that we actually care about them, because they're all awful people.
Well, I think it has a lot in common with any good writing, which is, however badly behaved or downright bad the people are, a good drama or a good comedy will get you on their side in some way. Even if you don't approve what they're doing, it will humanize them. So it was the same with The Wire, with some of the so-called villains, although because it was so clever and nuanced, you didn't know who was a villain, really. You couldn't judge them quite as clearly as you thought you were able to at the beginning of the series. And the same with The Sopranos, say, something like that. These people are, by any reasonable measure, hideous human beings. They're killing people. They're thugs and killers. Yeah. And yet you start to grow affectionate towards them. It's extraordinary. And the same with this. That's been great. And I watched an amazing, I wanted to mention this, was a brilliant, quirky British film called Bait, set in a Cornish fishing village. I thought it's going to be quite hard work. It's shot in black and white. It's got this grainy quality. I think it was filmed on a handheld old-fashioned film camera, and they've dubbed it so it sounds very old-fashioned, but it was shot now.
Oh, wow.
And it's brilliantly compelling and very darkly amusing, and I think it's totally original. It's called Bait.
And brilliant.
There were loads of actors I'd never heard of in it, and they were all absolutely fantastic. And it kind of reminded me in terms of the society, the segment of society it was portraying, of a kind of seaside version of this country. Yeah. So I think it's really great.
Oh, they're going to put that on the poster. Seaside version of this country. That's
they might do. They might do. Who knows? I think they've already done well, actually, so they probably don't need any reference to anyone else.
And you mentioned reading. I'm impressed by anyone that's got the headspace for reading. I am a very big reader. During this time, I've read nothing apart from, as you say, scrolling online articles all the time. What have you been reading?
Look, I'm not going to pretend, Simon. I do mainly do what you're doing, and I've kind of had to force myself to read a bit, because I feel it's good for my soul and my mental health. There's something about being hunched over a very bright screen and looking down all the time like that. It does something to you, and it's not good. And you don't come out terribly well informed quite often after an hour of that, or feeling better about it. So I've had to force myself, and I literally do not have very much spare time to myself, nor does my wife in any given day to do that. So it is forcing myself, but it's been a lovely thing to even just read for 20 minutes in an afternoon, just to grab some time with a cup of tea and go, do you mind if I just head off for 20 minutes, half an hour, and read a book, and I'll come and take over, or at the end of the day. So I've actually I've been reading. It sounds very dry, but I find it very, very interesting and very comforting. I've been reading 2 history books on the go. One is a history of Iran, which is where my dad was from. I'm half Iranian, and it's fascinating, and I love it because it's spanning from like 2000 BC to the present day. The other thing is, which is strangely comforting, it's going to sound slightly dark and twisted, is a brilliant history of the Siege and Battle of Stalingrad by Anthony Beevor. I don't know if you know, it's a very famous historical account of the siege of Stalingrad. I'm kind of reading up on people who suffered far more than we are now.
Reminiscing to better times.
I know, reminiscing. You look at that, it's brilliantly written, it's utterly gripping, and it's just, you kind of go, I don't know how anyone survived that. So yes, that's what I'm reading. I'm going to move on to some fiction at some point.
Is there anything else that you've been doing to keep your mind off of the world? Have you been using meditation apps, or have you been doing online yoga?
It's finding moments to just look up, get out, listen to the bird song. It sounds twee, but going for the hour with my son, I kind of try and I switch the phone off. I try and make sure I just focus on him and just try and be in the moment and not think about, as much as possible, anything else other than where I am and being in that moment. It's hard though, because you go out for an hour and very quickly in London, you're kind of obsessed with how close people are getting to you, and it's not necessarily a relaxing time. But if you can find a moment to be in nature or away from all of this, it's a healthy thing. And for some people, it's reading. That's helped. And just talking to people, just having people you can be honest with, and not having to always put a brave face on things. And obviously, alcohol obviously helps. But actually, no. I mean, in all seriousness, it would be very tempting to drink a lot, and I'm 50 something now. I kind of have to watch that kind of thing, because it's a very quick way of relaxing. But as a parent of an 8-year-old child, you can't function on a hangover anymore. Or you can try, but it's going to make your life very miserable. A word of advice to everyone out there.
It's a very long morning.
Daddy's grumpy again.
He's been drinking the magic juice.
Yeah.
We have to talk about this country, of course, because so many people will be turning to this as their sort of comfort TV of choice, I think, at the moment. And the latest series was massive, 52 million requests for all 3 series on BBC iPlayer. I looked this up. That's more than the entire population of South Korea.
Well, and I think South Korea may be our next target audience. Who knows? I'd love if it was a massive hit in South Korea. How mad would that be? I'd absolutely love that. Hello, Seoul! It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Funny enough, it's quite lockdown-ish in its premise, in a way.
Yes.
All the characters are stuck in the village. They can't escape. Kerry and Curtin can't escape. So it's got a sort of lockdown feel to it in some ways, their lives. But it's been incredible, the response. It's been absolutely amazing. And to be part of that is not something I ever expected. It feels like it was a huge gift, really. So much in life is by chance.
Yeah.
I think we all believed in it, absolutely. And I knew from the word go it was brilliant. But you know how, and I know how much stuff is made on television that just disappears without a trace.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask, like, when you get a script, as you did for that first series, do you look at it and think, this is a cut above? But as you say, you must have read so many great scripts over the years that either never got made or disappeared.
Loads of them. And so, like, my career started with theatre, and I've been going for about, 20 odd years, 25 years maybe. And up until about 5 or 6 years ago, really most of my work was theatre, and I was very happy doing that. And then I gradually thought, I really want to do more television. I love television, but it was also a way of providing a better living for my family. And there was very interesting work out there as well on television. A lot of people I admired were producing great things, and particularly comedy, which I was very interested in doing a lot of in theatre anyway. And so when I auditioned for it, it was a really nice period. It's the start of a really nice period, which has been up till now in the last 5 or 6 years, where I was starting to do really interesting projects on screen. So I was doing a film called Death of Stalin.
Yeah, of course.
With Armando Iannucci. And I just started, well, bless you, I felt so lucky being in that. I'd started rehearsing that. I got a call to come to the Union Chapel in Islington to have an audition for this thing called This Country of Ours, I think it was called back then. And all I got was a skeletal scene involving a character called the Vicar and Kerry and Curtin. I went, oh, this is funny. It looks interesting. And they said, be prepared to improvise a bit. And I went, okay, I think I can do that. A bit terrifying. But I thought, oh, come on, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I went, and in the room, I think, was Tom George, director, Daisy, Charlie, and then this man in the corner who they didn't introduce. And I was like, okay, right. So we read the scene, I started improvising, and we did it, and they seemed quite happy with it. And then we got to the chat bit where you just chat and talk about things. And I said, oh, hello, I'm just going to introduce myself to this guy, the chap in the corner. And I said, my name's Paul. No one was introducing her. And then eventually, I think Tom said, oh, this is Paul. He's Daisy and Charlie's dad. It's like, and already I thought, this is hilarious. There's just something deeply eccentric about this whole setup. Little was I to know that most of their family would be involved in the series. So Paul, who is Daisy and Charlie's dad, plays Martin Mucklow, and Trevor, their uncle, plays Len, their brother and sister in real life, Daisy and Charlie. And so we did the first series, and we all thought it was wonderful. And I read the script and I thought, this is great. Yeah. But even then I thought, well, let's enjoy this first series, because most things never go to second series. It'll be lovely, and that'll be it. Then it got second series, then it got a special, and then it got the final series. And each time it built and built. It was beautiful to be part of, really, on so many levels. Making it was just joyous. I mean, if you've seen the blooper reel, you will get some sense of how much laughter and joy there was. And that is just a fraction of what was going. It's amazing we got anything done. And wonderful actors, wonderful crew. Charlie and Daisy were so fleet of foot with their writing. It's so cutely observed, and they know their characters inside out, and then shaped by Tom George, the director, and Simon Mayhew Archer, the producer. So to have something they were writing, and as we got further along with a second and third series, they knew all of us, the actors, so much better, and they were writing for us. And to be a part of something like that is the absolute dream as an actor. To have writing of that caliber written for you as an actor is extraordinary. You so rarely get it. And it just kept building and building. And just to see, as you just quoted, this 52 million figure is just absolutely extraordinary. So it's been definitely one of the high points of my career, and I suspect it always will be. And I totally respect them for ending it on a high.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, my goodness, that last episode. TV finales in general, they're rarely good. They're usually full of fan service or too concerned with tying up loose ends. But that was perfect.
Oh, well, you're very kind. I mean, we were all waiting to see what they would come up with. There are about 3 or 4 different endings that we were playing with. They were all beautiful in their own way, but they chose the least sentimental ending.
Yeah, which was
and that says so much. And that's exactly the way they went throughout with this. They somehow managed to combine, again, I'm talking about their writing, not my performance, but they combined characters who in other scenarios you might go, these are heinous. Their behaviour is just so bad. Why should I care about them? With a deep vulnerability.
Yeah.
And there is a vulnerability to all the characters, which I think people relate to. And, of course, their observations and their writing is just so damn funny. But everything is tinged with pain. And the flip side is always there. You don't know when it's coming. It will turn dark or sad in a moment and then back again. And they somehow managed to do all that with a lightness of touch that and a lack of sentimentality, which I'm completely in awe of. I don't really know how they do it. It's incredible.
I thought it was so interesting that the ending was tied up with your character. It's not Kerry or Curtin leaving the village or even growing up. It's Francis. And it had to be him leaving, really, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it would be credible that they suddenly leave the village and grow so much. It's just not. It's not true to the characters or the situation, and that would have been slightly sentimental.
Yeah.
I think it would have been like we've all seen those comedies. And Americans are big fans of that kind of thing. It's almost like it's teaching you something at the end of it.
Yes.
We all have to have learned something about ourselves. They're like, no, stop this.
We've learned nothing.
They grow, the characters, but they grow to an extent that is believable.
Yeah.
It's like they're not leaving the village yet. The vicar's leaving the village. And ironically, it's the vicar who's really feeling out of his depth, who you think might be able to handle this quite well, but he has a massive crisis. And I love the fact that they did that. It's a testament to kind of how true they were to the characters. And they were very generous with the writing to give my character, the vicar, so much more depth. But also they expanded Mandy, Big Mandy. Yeah. They gave Len more to do. They give Arthur more to do, and Kaylee. It's gorgeous. There's a generosity to their writing, which is kind of reflects just what they're like in real life, because they're just delightful, brilliant, totally original and eccentric people, and I love them. But they wrote more and more. They wanted to kind of pass it on to other characters, which is just gorgeous. And
are you an actor who imagines what their character is doing after a series is finished, or do you kind of leave that character alone once you've finished?
I love Francis Seaton. I don't want you to assume too much when I say we have similarities, because I don't have anything like his patience. I do think he's probably struggling in Bristol with the needle exchange, and he's doing his best. I'm probably seeking a lot of advice from fellow vicars in the area, but I'm sure he will bring his particular set of skills to bear, even in rough, tough Bristol.
Well, I imagine even in normal times, a lot of people will often confuse you with the fictional vicar from this country. But, I mean, even chatting to you for the 20 or so minutes, I mean, you have such an easygoing demeanour that I feel I could open up my secrets to you. You know, it was me that ate the Easter egg.
I'm a serial killer, Simon, in real life. That's how they operate. We lure you in. Yeah, well, you're very kind. It felt very close to me. I don't feel like I was doing a big acting job on it. It was requiring certain things, that character. But most of the time it was just requiring really good listening. And he's almost like the straight man to their antics, which has its own challenges, mainly trying to keep a straight face while Charlie and Daisy are being utterly brilliant. There are aspects of that character which I feel very, very close to. And I think it's hard to know what his life is now, but I'd like to think he's adapting slowly but surely, with the help of his wife, who you never meet, called Polly.
Have people been seeking you out for counsel, as confusing you as the vicar?
No, they don't, really. They don't, thank goodness. Although, as you know, dear Michael Sleggs, who played Slugs, who very tragically died before we started filming, he, absolutely true to form and hilariously wanted at his funeral, he said, is there some way you could include my open casket maybe in the new series? Daisy told you no. I mean, these were deathbed requests, and this is all public knowledge, so I'm not betraying any intimacies here. But he also said, well, he relayed via Simon, the producer, to me, would I come and conduct his funeral dressed as the vicar? And I thought about it, and Simon, there was this long silence, and I said, absolutely not. For a start, I don't know how to conduct a funeral service. Secondly, there's going to be a real vicar there, because I think Michael was a practicing Christian, and what's he going to feel like having a pretend vicar right next to him? Anyway. So the lines do occasionally get blurred, but on the whole, no. I try and make sure people know I'm not him.
So just to put that dog collar, or I guess, on one final time, what do you think Francis would say to people at the moment? What would his message be for maybe people struggling or not getting by at the moment?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself what Jesus would do. Jesus would be kind. He wouldn't F and Jeff too much. He might do in private, though, and that's okay. Talk to each other. See what you can do for each other. And we'll be all right at the end of all this.
I almost teared up a bit there. That was beautiful. That was so nice. I have to finally ask, because it sounds like such an exciting project. Can you tell us anything about Chad?
Yeah, well, Chad is an 10-part American comedy series I was filming out in Portland with a brilliant actress, comedian and writer and creator of the show called Naseem Bedrad. She is a 30-something-year-old American Iranian actress who made her name on Saturday Night Live and is part of that crowd. And a lot of the people involved were part of that crowd. And it's about an American-Iranian family and centering on a 15-year-old boy called Chad, who's just trying to fit in. And he's from an Iranian-American background. And he's going through all the growing pains of that period of one's life and going to high school. And added into the mix is the fact that he is deeply embarrassed and uncomfortable with his Iranian heritage. And I'm part of his family. I'm the sort of, it's not fully explained, but I'm like an uncle, distant cousin / relative with a very big beard and a very thick Iranian accent, which is lovely for me. So I was playing this wonderful, funny, warm, eccentric character who is Iranian. And I'm half Iranian. It's lovely to be able to explore that. So we got about halfway through Chad. Oh, and the other thing to say was, the unique thing was Naseem, who created it, was playing the 15-year-old boy.
Wow.
So she would transform herself into a 15-year-old boy utterly convincingly. It's beautifully written. I hope it will get finished. We got 5 episodes in. We were filming in Portland when we were told they were going to suspend filming, and I was on a plane the next day.
Wow.
They built the set. The crew are very much ready to go when things improve and the network wants to push on with it, they say. So I'm hopeful that will finish and then we'll have that next year. Nothing though is certain, and one just has to kind of hope for the best.
Paul, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that. Wasn't Paul the loveliest? We had a chat before and after recording, and what you heard there was not an act. He's so incredibly nice, and he said some lovely things about the podcast. If you've not caught the latest series of This Country, 1, We Can't Be Friends, but 2, all 3 series plus the special are now on BBC iPlayer. And Death of Stalin is something I couldn't recommend highly enough. It is amazing. That's it for another episode. Please continue to score us on Apple Podcasts and post your reviews. The Sarah Phelps episode had such a big reaction. It went down really, really well, so thank you so much for your kind words. Don't forget to subscribe on wherever you get your podcast. I'll be back very soon, but in the meantime, please stay indoors